Good morning, everyone. Welcome. We are so happy to have you all here at our first ever undergraduate projects and research conference. Can I get like a huge... We're so excited. And I don't want to take up too much of your time. You've got a delicious lunch to eat, and we've got a fantastic speaker. You're not coming here for me, that's for sure. I'm going to turn the time over to Clifton Sanders, our provost, who's going to introduce our speaker, Luisa Whittaker-Brooks.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the first annual Undergraduate Projects and Research Conference, a forum for students to share their discoveries. Some of you may not know this, but we've had symposia and conferences at the college in one form or another for the past 15 to 20 years. This is the first time that we've gathered as many things together as possible, so for lots of reasons. One, to showcase all of the talent in this room, all of the work that's being done across the college, and also for those of you who have been involved in these or heard about these before, symposia and forums are a way that scientists, researchers, and everybody not just display their work, but come together to share knowledge, to share insights. This is a place, these kinds of things are opportunities for you to see new possibilities, to stimulate your thinking, and to get excited about the possibilities for you to contribute to make a better world, to explore your passions in research. And so these are great community spaces for innovation and progress. And so welcome. Today, I have to tell you that you're about to hear from one of the outstanding scientists in the world. I met Dr. Luisa Whittaker-Brooks about five years ago at the University of Utah, and I went to read stuff about her. I am still blown away. This for you and for me is almost a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to hear from a world-class, outstanding scientist who is still on the rise. She hasn't even hit her stride yet in how she's going to impact the world of science and technology and humanity, and we get to hear her today talk about her journey. So let me read you a few things about my colleague and friend who I am a huge fan and admirer of. I told her I'd embarrass her, and so I have to say that. So let me read you a few things about Dr. Luisa Whittaker-Brooks. She is an associate professor of chemistry at the University of Utah. Her research centers on the design of well-defined hybrid materials with controlled morphology and interfaces. For those of you who morphology, controlled shapes, patterns, and interfaces, contact points, as conduits for deterministic and coherent energy and charge transfer for applications in energy conversion, storage, and electronics. Dr. Whittaker-Brooks received her Bachelor of Science degree in Analytical Chemistry from the University of Panama. Under a Fulbright Fellowship, she received her Master of Science and Doctor of Philosophy degrees in Materials Chemistry from the State University of New York at Buffalo. She is a postdoctoral researcher in the Department of Chemical and Biological Engineering at Princeton University. She was the recipient of the 2013 LOreal Fellowship for Women in Science Award and the 2015 Marion Milligan Mason Award for Women in the Chemical Sciences, administered by the American Association for the Advancement of Science. Recently, she was named a Sialog and Cottrell Fellow by the Research Corporation for Science Advancement. She was also named a Talented 12 by Chemical and Engineering News, one of the largest publications, scientific magazines in the world. And she received a Gira Ovshinsky Energy Fellow by the American Physical Society. She is also the recipient of a Department of Energy Early Career Award and a Sloan Fellowship in Chemistry. Let me just say one last thing. Sloan Fellowship recipients are recognized in chemistry as the rising stars of tomorrow. And we have a Sloan recipient here. And so I think I've embarrassed her enough. Let me turn the time over to Luisa Whittaker-Brooks, and let's just welcome her and just enjoy what she has to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that introduction, and I definitely got a lot of goosebumps going on with that. And what I have to say is that this is my first in-person seminar since the pandemic started. So if I bombed it, you know why, all right? Okay, so let me just start and telling you what I would like to discuss here and just give you an overview of my journey through science with a little bit of research, because probably you guys don't want to listen a lot of that jargon and stuff. But the thing is, let me talk about my background, my inspiration, and my journey to success, right? So you will notice that I have an accent, so I'm actually from Panama, right? And normally what people will know from Panama is the Panama Canal, right? Or probably if you follow boxing, you might know Roberto Duran, and probably that's it, right? And probably we are associated with drugs too, right? So the thing is, actually, the Panama Canal they started building the Panama Canal with Chinese, okay? The thing is that all of them couldn't withstand the weather and yellow fever, so most of them actually died. And that's where they replaced the Chinese with the blacks from actually, not from directly from Africa, but from the Caribbean, okay? So the thing is that we have a lot of, a mix going on because a lot of the population actually mix through. And our Spanish, so if I actually speak Spanish with, people from Mexico or Guatemala, my Spanish is a little bit different because it has a lot of infusion from Africa and from Asia, so from China. So we use a lot of those slangs. So normally when I'm around a lot of Chinese people, they're like, oh, how can you understand us? And then I have to give them all that background. But yeah, so our Spanish has a lot of Asian and African slangs in it. Okay, so something that I actually enjoy a lot is soccer, right? And the thing is that, no, not so much nowadays, but I'm actually a big video gamer. And the nice thing about playing video games is that I can make Panama win the World Cup, right? So that is what I did, right, in one of my games. So I used Panama as my team, and they won the World Cup in video games, right? So, and I'm a very huge fan of the women's soccer team, right, because of all the perseverance and, increasing diversity, equity, and inclusion within the sports, okay? So if you're following the news right now, right, I'm not that happy with my Mexican friends, because this is how the table for the World Cup that will be in November in Qatar. So you will note, just to give you a little bit of background, if you don't know soccer, only the first 3 qualify for the World Cup. So Panama is sitting here in the 4th spot, and Mexico is here on the top. So it means that right? It means that some of these 3 have to do something wrong, and I will be happy with them. So I don't know. Something has to happen, because if Panama goes to the World Cup, I'm going to Qatar. So somebody is messing up my vacation. All right? And these are the games that are coming up on March 24th. So definitely I need Mexico. Where's the Mexico one? Yeah, I need the United States to beat Mexico. Okay, so let me give you a background. So I started here, I came in the US in 2007. And you know, you normally have a job to pay college and all that. So, and I had to admit that I like to party a lot. So one day I was in Panama back in 2004, 2005 or something like that. I went to the club, and in the club there were 3 Americans, right? And then they're like, "Oh, you speak English?" And I'm like, "Oh, well, relatively." Right? And they're like, "So what do you study?" And I'm like, "Chemistry." And then they're like, "Oh, you should be good with numbers." I'm like, "I guess so." Right? They're like, "Oh, do you want a job?" I'm like, "Sure. What do I have to do?" "Yes, I want a job." Right? So I actually started working for this company that the decoy name was Data Support Services. And I say that as a decoy name because it was actually a betting company, right? So this company actually was in Costa Rica, and they moved to Panama because the FBI was tracking them down in Costa Rica. So they moved to Panama, right? So I was actually moving lines in Panama related to Las Vegas, right? Nowadays, probably this is a little bit more legal, but in that time, definitely it was not legal. Okay, so the thing is that around 2006, the FBI finally tracked them down in Panama, and it was actually one of like the big ones involved with this company as well. So what I decided to do in order to get out of that company and get out of Panama is that I started looking for places where I could do my PhD in chemistry. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be standing here because I was making good money, okay? All right, so I started, drafting emails, and I actually came across this email probably in 2011. So while a lot of time passed when I was already here in the US, and I found this email because I was trying to delete my Hotmail account because nobody uses Hotmail anymore. So I'm like, all right, so let me see what is in Hotmail that I need to delete. And I came across this email, right, that I wrote to a potential PhD advisor in Canada, okay? And when I saw that email, I had to be honest with you that I started crying, right? Because if you actually read this email, I don't know, probably Google Translator will have done a better job. Who knows, right? So it's very broken English, okay? And this is actually my resume that I used at that time, so you can actually see the no sexy picture of me before kids, right? And then you basically have all my vitals here. You have actually what in Panama would be called the social security number. So I basically put my Panamanian social security number there with my address and my birth name, so everything, right? So probably a lot of people will, I don't know, get loans on my name. Right? Then there's the objective of my application with a lot of typos, a total mess. Okay? So I was extremely lucky that, I don't know, based on that CV, I applied for a Fulbright scholarship. And I got a Fulbright scholarship that actually gives you the opportunity to do your PhD or your studies in the US, but they kind of confine you to places. So I was accepted into the University of Buffalo and Florida State University, okay? And I was accepted into New Jersey after I had to do my TOEFL exam 3 times. So TOEFL exam is your English exam that you need in order to come to the US, okay? So I failed that 3 times, and they told me like, hey, this is the 4th time that you're gonna use that. You're gonna have to pass this, or if not, we're withdrawing the scholarship, okay? And that was very tough because one, with those standardized tests, you're listening to things that I'm not interested in, And that was the issue. It wasn't so much about me not talking English, but me not interested in listening to that, whatever they were saying, okay? Or the other way around. I'm like, oh, this is very exciting. This is really interesting. Oh, shoot, I forgot the details. What is the question that I need to answer? And I totally forgot, okay? So I ended up picking the University of Buffalo just because I wanted, one, to improve my English, so I didn't want to go to Florida, because I'm pretty sure that I would just hang out with a lot of Hispanic friends. So I ended up in Buffalo, and in the middle of June, coming from Panama, it was cold. I was probably the only one walking with a coat and a scarf in Buffalo at that time, okay? And the lack of a support platform also played a big role on how I felt, right? So I started to feel depressed because there was not a lot of people like me that I could see in Buffalo, right? So it was very hard. It was very, very hard. I'm not gonna lie, okay? But then what I decided to understand is that, well, I need to find somebody that will be part of my network, okay? Regardless if they're in chemistry or if they're in science or engineering or whatever it is. So that is what I did. So I found a lot of friends that actually were in the engineering department, social work, all that, where they were Hispanics like me, and we were actually underestimated, okay? And we were underestimated by a group of people that are actually called lecheros. So lechero is basically coming from milk. You probably do not translate that well into English, but it's like milkers, if you think of a word, right? And these type of people were the ones that you would think that will most likely succeed. The one that have the perfect GPA, the perfect GRE score, all the research in the world, a very strong background, right? So if I come back to my betting background, then probably you will put all your money on them, okay? And then there was us, where we had a decent GPA so we could survive and not being kicked out of the program, right? My GRE, the verbal part, was just terrible. I'm like, I had never heard these words in my life. I'm like, what? Until I actually met somebody in Buffalo that told me that I didn't know those words because I never read the Bible. I don't know. So I failed my TOEFL, I barely survived. So a lot of people would tell us like, oh, you have a lot of potential energy. A lot of people have a lot of potential energy, including the Geico lizard, if you listen to commercials, right? So the thing here is that whenever you bet on safe bets, you don't get a lot of turnaround money, okay? But if you actually pick, I don't know, let me say a football team that is terrible, New York Jets, to win the Super Bowl, and they actually win the Super Bowl, then you will probably make millions out of like $1 that you put on them, okay? But if you put $1 on Tampa Bay Buccaneers or LA Rams that won last year, that dollar will probably give you like a penny, okay? So sometimes it's really nice to, think outside of the box and bet on things that are not that sure, okay? All right, so I normally will say that, being underestimated is one of the biggest competitive advantages that you have playing on your side, okay? So people want to underestimate you, it's great. You just have to prove them wrong, and that's easy, because it depends on you, okay? All right, and I always like to bring up my core, right? My core that where we all were like that, average students, and they all at very top places now, and very successful scientists. And if I actually think about los lecheros, I don't even know where they are, okay? I'm pretty sure they're not doing anything good with their lives, all right? So go ahead, underestimate me. You won't be the first, you won't be the last, but you will be wrong, okay? And of course, I'm a big fan of Cardi B, if you guys don't know who Cardi B is, okay? All right, so what is the problem with role models, right? The problem with role models is that we just don't know where they are, okay? So if we actually look at, I don't know, music, probably a lot of you guys will know all these people, who all these people are, right? Probably like 2 or 3 years ago, I knew that there was because I don't listen to country music, but I didn't know there was a black woman that actually sings good country music, right? And then if you actually go to science, probably the only person that will recognize there, Albert Einstein, Marie Curie, Isaac Newton. And the thing is, if you actually notice, these people, they have made them more credible. Why do we have to picture Marie Curie like this in a black and white picture and with her hair not being done? Or this Albert Einstein all with his hair all like crazy. So normally the depiction that we have of a scientist is that they are very awkward, nerdy people that probably don't like hanging out with anybody, okay? Or probably you guys do not know this black guy right here, but he's Dr. Garrett Morris, which is the one that invented light traffics and face masks. That is very appropriate for the time that we are living in, okay? But then the thing is, whenever we think about minority students, we are not associated with science. We are normally associated with other things, right? So in the Hispanic community, probably they know all these people, El Chapo, and probably you don't know this guy, but that is Gaviria, so he was in drug mug in Colombia. And of course, Noriega, which is from Panama, right? So that's a problem. So what does this lack of role models do? Okay, sometimes we are mislabeled because we are profiled that this is the only thing that we can do and it's not related to science. Okay, we are underestimated. We are treated as we are not capable to do anything beneficial for society. Okay, and you never get the respect you deserve. Okay, I have been in places where people actually address everybody as doctors, and I'm Luisa, okay? Despite them, I'm having more degrees and more recognition than them, okay? And the thing with that is that then you have that gap, and then if you actually think about this guy, probably you just can't recognize him that much, but he is actually Ryan Cogley, which is the inventor of Black Panther, okay? So he went to a bank and he was trying to withdraw some money and he was just arrested because they thought that he was gonna rob the bank, okay? And an example that I actually like to use is my own son. So we were actually at one of his swimming classes back probably in January or something like that. And there's this guy that came to him and gave him $100. And I was like, okay, what is going on? And the guy just proceeded to say, I hope this money can help your family and can help and you can help your mom put food on the table. Okay? So he definitely miscalculated me and said, well, this has to be a poor black woman that just happened to be at a rec center with a black kid. Okay? And a lot of my friends say, like, hey, why did you take the money? I'm like, money is money. I mean, I could have given him my Vimeo account if he wanted, right? He could still give me more money if he wants, right? But that is the thing that we have to face, because, again, he did not associate me with science or anything. He just said, well, this has to be a black woman, a poor black woman. Okay? All right? So the thing is that we have the role models. Okay? The problem is that we don't emphasize or advertise these role models enough. Okay? So, for example, we have a lot of NASA people in here, people that have made batteries better. Okay? Probably you do not know who Dr. Corbett is, but she is the one that came up with the vaccine for the COVID shots. Okay? And whenever we think about that, with the vaccine shots, I would think about Pfizer or Moderna or Johnson & Johnson. You just don't think about the people that actually made that possible. Okay? Okay, so what we actually need is more advertising and recognizing from us that we have these role models. Okay? So more advertising actually makes addressing the pipeline, or the diversity, equity, and inclusion pipeline more achievable. Okay, so let me go back to me. So I come from Panama, finished Buffalo, and then I finish my PhD, and then I started feeling something that is called Imposter Syndrome, and I call it Imposter Syndrome 1.0 because it has different stages. So I started my PhD, I finished my research, but then you have a lot of people who will tell you, oh, you can't do it, you can't do it, you can't do it. Okay? And actually my research started a company where we were coating corrosive materials for boats. Okay, particularly, so we actually have a commercialization with the Navy, because what happened is that most of these boats will corrode, and then what you don't want to do is, decommission that ship so you can clean it out. So what we did is that we coated all those ships with this anti-corrosion material, and in that way you can just keep those ships wherever they want to be. Okay. And all the different awards that came through my PhD path, right? So I remember when I got the LOreal Fellowship, which is given to 5 women out of 2,000 applications. And I remember when I was putting the application together, and I told my postdoc advisor at that time, I'm like, why am I doing this? I don't think I'm going to get it. And then she told me, then if you don't think you're going to get it, then why are you putting it together? Don't do it. And that actually resonated in my head, and I said, sure, why not, right? And to my surprise, yeah, I got it, right? But then I just realized that I was my biggest challenge. Okay, so if I believe that I cannot do it, then definitely I'm not going to do it. Okay. All right, then I started my job here at the University of Utah. Okay, then so I basically moved from Buffalo, where we were doing these coating materials. Then I moved to Princeton, where we were still doing coating materials, but more for electronics. So trying to make like flexible electronics and light-emitting diodes. And then I started in Utah, okay? And then there's the point where you want to, impress people, and then people will just ask you like very simple questions, like, what do you do for fun? Or how was your weekend? And I would just like freeze. I'm like, I don't know what to tell these people, because they all look like very famous people or very known people in the area. I don't want to tell them that I was sleeping, or I don't want to tell them that I went to Las Vegas. I don't know, right? So then there was that part of me where I was just lying, bluntly lying. I'm like, oh yeah, I was working on this proposal all weekend. right? But it wasn't what I was doing, but it was just basically me trying to act like them, okay, instead of just being me. All right. Then, people will ask me, what do you do for fun? I'm like, I work all day, right? And basically, I was just hiding what I basically was doing, right? I like boxing, so I do boxing. I'm Hispanic. I love watching soap operas until I go to sleep. And I'm a big fan of La Rosa de Guadalupe. That's what I do, right? I like being silly with my kids and going to bars with my husband, and that's me, right? That's my weekend, or trying to get my son out of trouble, right? So that is what I really do. So I was just, by trying to please other people, I was just not living my life, and I'm not doing that anymore, okay? Okay, so what do I actually do for research, just to give you a little bit of a background? So we make flexible electronics, right? So this is what we call a thermoelectric material, so a material that can convert heat into electricity, right? So what my student is doing here is just taking heat from his fingertips and then converting it into this voltage change that you see here. Then he can just apply another side of the electrode, and then he converted into an opposite voltage change right here, okay? So what is that good for? So let's say that you have a wearable thermoelectric device on you, and then you go for a jog, then you are just releasing a lot of heat. Then you can just take that heat, convert it into electricity, and let's say charge your phone, okay? So if you actually think about the sun, normally we talk about photovoltaic devices, but the theoretical limit of a photovoltaic device is 30%. The rest, 70% of it, is dissipated as heat. So why don't we just focus on converting that 70%? So that's basically what my research is about. Instead of just trying to increase the experimental yield of a solar cell, which is around 18% right now, to 30, might as well try to convert that 70, which is bigger than reaching that 30. Okay? So that's what my research is about. And then in that same realm, we also make a lot of different functional devices. So we always talk about converting electricity or sunlight into electricity. The thing is, if we don't have batteries to store them, there's no point of converting it. So if you have a bunch, and now it's profitable because if there is solar panels on somebody's roof, then you can just sell that back to the grid. But let's say that in the future, if every house had a solar panel, then the grid will just be so overwhelmed that we'll have to just throw it away. Okay? So what we're doing here is coming up with batteries that can store that unused energy. Okay? And we make flexible sensors for, let's say, glucose sensing, things like that, biomaker, solar panels, electronic paper, and then now what we call quantum technology, so make computers faster and store information better. So, but all that does not come without, fundamental science. So we actually make a lot of these materials that we call nanomaterials because they are smaller than, let's say, one hair. And we assemble it into these single nanowire devices. And in the realm of batteries, what we want to do is be able to control the properties of materials with a magnetic field. Okay? So if you actually put a magnetic field, then you can either make a material better or worse. The other thing that we work on is something that we call topological materials, where we change the surface of that material so it can store electricity or it can store information better. Okay? And this is actually some materials that you can use to make computers faster. Because if you actually think about computers, you buy a computer, I don't know, 3 years from now, then it will start getting hot. Okay? And that's because the silicon that is made of your computer is starting to fade. So what we're doing here is that replacing silicon in electronics with these organic materials and then converting that heat into a stored cycle where I can store energy based on that heat. Okay? And then we also characterize materials as they're working. So normally, the way that it works in science is that you will come up with a material and then you determine what it happens theoretically, but normally those factors are isolated. So it means if a person was a material, you just think about them living in an isolated world. But what happens if you take that person and put him in a dynamic situation like this? In what table are they going to sit? Why will they like that table? Why they wouldn't like that table? Okay? So materials actually behave in that same way. So what we try to do here is understand how materials will change, either for good or for bad, in a particular scenario. Okay? And normally that is called operando characterization. So it means that you characterize the material under its working conditions. All right? So that's what I do for research. But the thing is that none of that could have been possible if I didn't have a good mentorship around me. Okay? So this is my PhD advisor, and that guy is just phenomenal. I just can't, I don't think I would be here without him. Okay? This is my postdoc advisor, again, and all the things that she told me, and then just taking me out of, having that low self-esteem and actually believing that I could do all these things, right, will have not, again, been possible. And then all the different network, my husband, my kid, and all my family members, right? So they definitely helped me finish or be here, because I don't think I would have withstand that cold in Buffalo and not having any good food in Buffalo. I don't think so. Okay, and to the point where I actually have my research group right now, and just thinking about my journey, I normally will, try to instill in them all the things that were instilled in me. Okay? So treat your goals as a thermodynamic state of function. So what does that mean? So in a thermodynamic state of function, it doesn't matter what your end goal or your initial line is. It just matters that you reach there. So you can take that path, you can take the straight line, whatever it is, or go around, or whatever it is. As long as you get there, it doesn't matter how you get there and how long it takes. Okay? So, being able to start from here and, have all these different publications where I actually have to write in English, and that's why I said that whenever I found this and coming back to all the things that I have accomplished at the time that I found that letter just made me realize how far I has come on and how many people totally did not bet on me. And, growing up in a place that looked like this, this is actually my hometown, and this is actually where I grew up, exactly that building. The last time that I went to Panama, I took a picture of it, okay? And to actually be a renowned scientist, again, it's those things where it hits me whenever I go back to my hometown, and I just don't think anybody will have ever thought that this kid will be in the U.S. and will be so successful. I don't think so. Okay, so reaching goals. So normally this is the plan that we normally think, I'm going to apply for school. I'm going to get into grad school, and I'm going to do this. So normally that is what it looks like. But in reality, there's a lot of different things in the path, okay? And you shouldn't be discouraged by them, okay? And when I say discouraged, yeah, probably that discouragement should last 5 minutes. You can cry. You have, even when I started at the University of Utah and I got my first grant rejected, I cried. I was so mad, right? But I just realized that I just had to stand up and keep reapplying, okay? And just keep in mind that whatever people see as your success is just the tip of the iceberg. Whenever you see somebody successful, you just don't know how the things they had to go through, right? So, don't let anybody define you, right? So if you want to be whatever you want to be, just be it. And remember that you are the limiting factor with all the things that you want to do. Okay, so something that I always say is that I'm pretty sure that everybody in this room is going to be successful. But just remember something. Plant the seed. So it means that whenever you get to that success point, remember there is a lot of people behind you that need that encouragement. Okay? So don't be selfish and, get all the success and all the money and all that, and then just live a good life and then forget about the people that are behind you. Okay? So that is the way that I like to think about that. Whenever you see that little small plant right there, there has to be reinforced with well-defined roots. Okay? And we can all contribute into defining those roots. Okay? So that comes with, motivation, goal, support, direction, coaching, telling people that, hey, you can do it. What can I do in order to help you get there? Okay? We can do it together. Okay? So give the gift of mentoring. Right? And the way that I think about that is a student that I had in my class, probably it was before the pandemic, 4 years ago. Right? And the first day of class, he told me, I had never seen a Hispanic person be my professor before. Or we were talking in Spanish, actually, and he said, I never thought that I will actually use you as an inspiration for what I want to do in life. Okay? And the thing is, he was actually not, an A student when he got to my class, my chemistry course. Okay? And he's not in my research group, but he actually, at the end of that semester, he had the best grades that we could have in the chemistry department. Okay? And he actually sent me, because he's doing bio. I don't do anything bio-related because I cannot do that. My brain does not work for bio. So the thing is that he actually sent me his essay that he was putting together for grad school applications. Okay? And this was actually one of the parts where he said, I have taken Gen Chem from Dr. Whittaker-Brooks, my first and only Latina, who had an accent just like me, okay, looked just like me. And she was incredibly influential on my decision to become part of the field, and become, first-gen, non-native, LGBTQ person in the field. Okay? So again, whenever I saw that coming from him, it just reminded me that I planted the seed. And I'm pretty sure that he's going to do the same. Okay? So this is the part of my job that I actually like, and seeing that he was actually accepted for grad school to every single university that he applied to. Okay, so with that, I would like to thank you, and answer any questions that you will have. You can ask me whatever you want. I will be very, oh shoot, I will be very honest. All right, then comes that awkward moment where nobody wants to see anything. All right.
What advice would you give to students and faculty and others about overcoming that imposter syndrome?
Honestly, I have not overcome it. I haven't. I still have it, particularly when I interact with, Nobel Prize winners or people that are in the National Academy of Sciences that we are writing grants together, and sometimes they will say something, and I'm like, I'm not going to tell this guy that he is wrong, right? So I have to be honest with you that I still have it, but actually I recognize that I have it. But the fact that I recognize that I have imposter syndrome allows me to use that as a motivation. Okay, so don't use it in a negative way, but actually turn it into a positive way, in terms of like, oh, I recognize that I'm among the best, so I'm the best too, right? So just recognizing that has helped me quite a bit overcome that. Yep. Cologne. Are you from Panama?
My mom and my dad.
You should understand what that means, right? Okay, so in Panama, the places actually are broken down into numbers. So I'm from a part that number is 3, so we know, and it's from Cologne, so we actually say C3. So, yeah.
Can you walk us through a bit better with this experience where your grant proposal was rejected and why you were crying and why that made you so mad? The reason I'm asking that is I think we have some high school students here, and when they hear it, they're like, what's the big deal? Why are you crying about that? Could you kind of explain that better, why that's such an emotional thing?
Yeah, because whenever you are, and it probably can translate to whenever you are applying for, college or things like that, where we normally get very fixated and think that that is the only path that we have, right? And I thought that that was the only path that I had for that proposal. I'm like, oh, I put all my effort into this, and people just didn't recognize my effort. So that's why I just broke down. I'm like, God, I thought that this was the best thing that I ever put together for somebody to say that is the worst thing they had ever read, right? So and to be honest with you, whenever, and something that I really do not appreciate is the scientific community sometimes tend to be very harsh, because one is confidential, so you don't know who the reviewers are. So people just like unleash whatever they're going through into your review and things like that, right? So sometimes it can come out as very direct, right? So that definitely affected me. But then I realized that there were other projects that I could do, not just that. And the same thing came with tenure time, right? A lot of people will always ask me, like, oh, are you stressed out about tenure? I'm like, why should I be stressed out about tenure? If I don't get tenure, then I do something else, right? But then the problem also with that is that normally we just don't think about plan Bs that often. We are so determined on plan A that we just don't think about the other plans. Right? Same thing goes with a lot of students that want to go to med school. They don't get into med school, and then they're like, oh my God, what am I going to do with my life? I can't do anything else, right? But then if you just pause 1 second and then think, well, med school probably is not the only thing that I have. I can actually do this, right? So that was the point where I started through those rejections, I started realizing that I had other options. That if I would have not been rejected, I would have not realized that I had other options that were probably better options. Okay, so that's that. That I just didn't realize that I had other options. Yep. Mm-hmm. I mean, it sometimes happens so often, right? Because what happened is that, one, people normally think that you should, I don't know, dress up a certain way or act a certain way in order to be a scientist. And then if you get out of the norm, I remember when I got the Talented 12 award, and one of the questions that they ask you, again, is coming back to those imposter syndrome things. It's like, oh, what do you do for a hobby? Or what is your favorite song? And things like that. So I actually went back to the past winners, and I'm like, do I belong here? Because, I mean, these people are like listening to opera. I don't know if they're lying or what, but I don't listen to opera. I don't listen to classic music. I don't even read books, right? So I was like, shoot, if I just come up and say, am I going to look different, right? But then I'm like, screw it. That is who I am, right? So I just put, like, I don't read books. Music that I listen to Daddy Yankee. Yeah, and then all my friends actually make fun of me because I'm the only person in there that has a Daddy Yankee song. They actually had to look up the lyrics to make sure that I was not cursing everybody out or whatever. I'm like, well, that is what I listen to, right? But then the thing is, how do you, going back to your question of how do you deal with people when they, attack you like that or just don't acknowledge who you are, right? I honestly, with you, I just ignore them. But again, I use that as a fuel to show them that I'm better than them. Yep. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Again, it goes back to those lecheros, right? Because with them, they were like, oh, like we were discussing our exams, and then I don't know, get a B in an exam, and then they all got an A. And they're like, how did you miss that question? I mean, like, that was easy. Like, why did you, like, they would actually tell me that. And I'm like, I have to show these MTFs, say the word here, I have to show these goddamn people that I'm way better than them, right? So that was actually my driving force through grad school, right? And whenever I used to get things, I'm like, all right, why you didn't apply? I mean, that was easy. Why you didn't apply for it? Man, how do you miss this? Why you didn't get that, right? So it was just me turning it around them, right? So using people that discourage you as a motivation. Show them that they're wrong. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so again, build your network, and then identify people that can actually make you grow, okay? So there is people in the field, and it doesn't have to be directly in Salt Lake Community College, right? But there's people in the field that actually want to see more people like us, okay? And they are very committed to seeing more people like us, okay? Like in my case, in the Department of Chemistry, we have a pot of money that we use for recruiting. So we go to small colleges across the U.S. And try to recruit students to go to Utah. And I have not gone to any universities where my white colleagues can go to. Okay? So I normally go to HBCU, so historically black colleges and universities. I normally go to Hispanic serving institutions. Because they had, and in some of those cases, they had never seen people like me. Okay? And I didn't grow up in the US, and I didn't know how the severity of this was until I was interviewing for faculty positions. I interviewed at the University of Alabama, right? And when I was applying for a job, for a faculty job, I'm like, oh, I'm just applying for all the openings possible. Alabama, all right, fine, they have an opening, whatever that means. Or Wyoming, they have one. So I was very blind, and probably that's why I ended up in Utah, to be honest with you. I was very blind with what how different states in the U.S. are known for, right? When I accepted the position here at Utah, my postdoc advisor was like, "You're going to Utah?" I'm like, "What's wrong?" She's like, "Oh, you cannot drink in Utah." I'm like, "So?" It's not like I'm an alcoholic. Right? So, but there's also these misconceptions about different states depending on where you are. So I actually interviewed at the University of Alabama, and I remember, and my husband is actually from the US, so he grew up in DC, and then he was like, "I don't know why you applied to the University of Alabama. We're not going to Alabama." I'm like, all right, okay, hey, well, I guess I applied. They are interviewing me, I have to go. So I got there, and I was giving my seminar, and I remember in the back, there was just a lot of black students. And I'm like, giving my seminar, at this point, I'm like in automatic mode because it was probably like my 6th or 7th interview. But that was still in my head. I'm like, wait, I thought they said in Alabama there were not black people. What is all these black people doing here? Right? And then at the end of my seminar, there's this black woman that came to me, and she started crying. And she's like, you are the first black woman that we have seen interviewed at this university. And not just that, you're seeing all those black kids in the back, they're all the black kids at the University of Alabama. So they were not in chemistry. So those were all the black kids at the University of Alabama that they just came to my seminar to see me. And I started crying with her. Because that is how much, how much we have to work on diversity and equity and inclusion in across different fields, not just science, but just seeing somebody like you means a lot, and it helps people change the way that they're thinking about career choices or life choices. Yeah. So just find that network and reach out. No more? Yeah. Yeah, so I was very lucky that some of them recognized the issues that we have with diversity. So they were like very, very eager to help, right? So and at those points, I did not reach out to them, but they were actually, like, I was very lucky that I don't know, I was just like dropped there and they were there. But the thing is, that is starting to change a little bit more, where we are gaining a little bit more of visibility, and people are definitely willing to reach out and help, okay? And I mean, as I said, I'm very direct, and that is who I am. And sometimes it will come out as where I'm just like targeting people. Like whenever I see somebody in my class that I know that they're either Black or Hispanic, I normally reach out to them. Okay? But because it reminds me of all the things that I have gone through. Yep.
So two questions. One, do you still play video games? And two, if not, how does that transition work as you were going to school?
What, video games?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, so when I was in grad school, I used to play video games a lot. Because I was actually doing a mix of like theoretical chemistry where you press enter and then that runs. So I had like a lot of free time to play video games. But the amount of time that I had, so probably I was devoting like 10 to 12 hours to video games back in grad school. And then it has started declining more and more as I become a faculty. So now I will play probably like 2 hours. Yeah. So I still do video games a lot, but now I used to do Candy Crush a lot, not anymore, because I don't think anybody play Candy Crush. So I'm now playing Cooking Craze. That's, yeah. And just keep in mind that whenever I'm playing those games, my brain is still active. I'm still thinking about a lot of things. So whenever I'm like playing video games, I'm like, oh wait, I think this is a good research idea. So I'll just like go back and write something and then pause the game and then do whatever I have to do and then go back to it. So that's my hobby. An interesting note is that when they were trying to recruit me to Utah, they sent me a schedule of all the activities that I was supposed to do here during my second visit. And those activities involve going skiing and snowshoeing. I'm like, who do you think gonna do that? I'm not doing that. So I just like send them an email. I'm like, I'm not doing any of that. Is it at 90 degrees? Yeah, so I'm not an outdoor person, but I replaced that with video games. Yeah. All right.